Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Slater. I'll be happy to provide that today. All bow your heads, please, and say your own prayers in your own words, in your own mind. Thank you, Jesus, Lord, for this wonderful day. Thank you for all the wonderful mercy that you've been giving us. Thank you for all of the good things that you have provided us: food, shelter, transportation. We also ask, Lord, that bless those who are not having a lot of success with gathering food for their families. We ask that you help them, Lord, to succeed in this endeavor so that they can nourish their families and be strong and move forward. We ask, Lord, that you help us with this pandemic. We ask you, Lord, that heal those who are sick, those who are not, protect them from getting sick from the virus. We ask, Lord, that you help us with our daily chores today. Our HES committee meeting, we have many topics that we need to discuss. Show us the way, Lord Jesus Christ. Give us the strength and wisdom and knowledge to move forward here with our right decisions that we need to make for our people. We ask, Lord, that you comfort all of those who have lost their loved ones. Give them strength to carry on. We know this is difficult, but you know, with your love and your wisdom, Lord, to guide us, to move through the day and help the people as much as we can, work for the people. We also, Lord, ask that you bless all our veterans out there, Lord, and thank them for giving us this freedom that we enjoy here every day, living on this earth, living in this country. We ask that you bless them, Jesus, have them be successful in their lives and help them to fight any mental problem that they might be having to conquer. We ask you, Lord, to give them strength and wisdom as well. Lord, we ask you to bless all of our President, Vice President, Navajo Nation Council as we move forward to spending the money that the Navajo federal government has issued. Give us the wisdom, Lord, to move forward with all these decisions, Lord. We ask all of these things in the name of Lord Jesus Christ, the Creator, who gives us all that we have today. Thank you for all the blessings that you have given us. In the name of Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Prayer.
Thank you very much, Delegate Helena. I just want to remind people on the committee meeting, please respect the committee and make sure your phones are muted. Committee members, do you have any announcements? Announcements going twice. Okay. We're going to move on to recognizing guests and visiting officials. Thank you very much to everyone who is participating in this Health, Education, Human Services Committee regular meeting today, December 8th. We appreciate you listening in, and if you're going to be presenting, we'll recognize you at the appropriate time. So we'll move on to item 3, review and adopt the agenda. Ms. Benali, can you read the proposed agenda into the record?
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee. You have your proposed agenda for the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee 24th Navajo Nation Council regular meeting December 8, 2021. Presiding, the Honorable Carl R. Slater, Vice Chairperson. Place is via telecommunications, Window Rock, Navajo Nation, Arizona. 1, call meeting to order, roll call, invocation, announcements. 2, recognize guests and visiting officials. 3, review and adopt the agenda. 4, review and adopt the journals. None. 5, receiving report. 8 is a report by the Navajo Nation Facilities Maintenance. And the presenter is going to be Marcus Tooley, Department Manager for the Navajo Nation Facilities Maintenance. B is a report by Tetra Tech Incorporated regarding the Navajo Capacity Building. Presenter is Mr. Rob Manriquez, who's a Principal Geologist for Tetra Tech. Also available for the presentations will be from Tetra Tech, Al Scott, Kathy Van Den Heuvel, and Leah Richer. And from the University of San Diego will be Rebecca Fielding Miller, Tommy Gaines, and Petri Wajaya. And I'm sorry, I apologize for mispronouncing if I did. C, the Navajo and Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund. And they're going to be giving a briefing update on their current involvement with Navajo communities. Presenters will be Ethel Branch, Interim Executive Director, and Sandra Begay, Deputy Director. 6, old business, none. 7, new business. A is legislation number 0247-21. B is legislation number 0250-21. C is legislation number 0256-21. 8, close of meeting, announcements and adjournment. The next meeting is travel for the HES committee on December 13th, 2021 to meet with Education Forward Arizona in Phoenix, Arizona. Mr. Vice Chair.
Hello.
The chair recognizes a motion from Delegate Helona. Is there a second? Is there a second to adopt the agenda?
Second, Wanika.
Okay, the chair recognizes a motion from Delegate Helona and a second from Delegate Wanika to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion, deletions, amendments, committee members?
No.
Vice Chair is Wanika.
Yes, Delegate Wanika?
Yes, I'd like to withdraw legislation 0247-21. The requesting parties asked me to withdraw this because of the moratorium on UUSC.
Okay, so are you going to withdraw it or you just want to delete it off the agenda for the time being?
Just going to withdraw it.
Okay. I think it's best if we do that as an amendment to the agenda. So I'll recognize your motion to amend the agenda to delete item 7A 0247-21.
Second that motion.
Okay, we have a second from Delegate Helona. Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Mose, can you please do a roll call vote on Amendment 1 to the agenda?
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Helona.
Green.
Honorable Pernell Helona votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Charlene So votes green. Honorable Daniel E. So. Honorable Daniel E. So. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Vice Chair, vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. Committee members, do we have any further amendments to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none. Mr. Bose, can you please do, or do we need to do a second reading of the agenda with the deleted item, Ms. Benali, or do we go straight to the vote?
Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee, the second reading would be that there was an amendment for the agenda by the Standing Committee. Amendment 1 is to delete legislation number 0247-21 from the agenda. And it was passed 4 in favor, 0 against, and the Vice Chair not voting. So the 7A will be deleted, and I'll renumber the rest of the legislations on the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I just see under 5C presenter, I think Ethel is ETHEL, not ETHYL. So another thing to consider. Committee members, we'll move to a vote. Ida, I see you're unmuted. Thank you. Okay, committee members, we're going to proceed to the vote. Mr. Mose, can you do a roll call vote on adopting the agenda as amended?
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Fernell Halona. Honorable Fernell Halona. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Daniel E. So. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Green. Edison J. Wanika votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Star 6, please. Vice Chair, a vote of 2 in favor, 0 opposed.
Not the quorum.
Hear us.
Delegate So, it shows you as muted. If you could do star 6 to vote. Delegate Halona, are you back on the call?
I don't see Halona, sir. Honorable Halona.
Okay. Delegate So, are you, it looks like you're unmuted now.
Yes, I'm on the call. Sorry about that.
We just had the vote on adopting the agenda as amended. Could you please cast your vote?
Yes, I vote in favor.
Thank you, Delegate So.
Honorable Charlene So votes in favor. Vice Chair, a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, well, we'll continue on with our agenda. Thank you very much, committee members and Delegate Halona. Until we have a motion, you can still cast your vote. So we'll move on to item 4, review and adopt the journals. There are none. Then we'll move on to item 5A, Navajo Nation facilities maintenance, proper and timely dispensing refuse from Navajo Nation buildings. Presenter Marcus Tooley, Department Manager 3, Delegated Navajo Nation facilities maintenance. Mr. Tooley, are you on the call? I see Delegate Halona. Delegate Halona, do you vote in favor or in opposition to adopting the agenda as amended?
I'm back on. Thank you. I'll vote green.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mose, can you please record his vote?
Mr. Arnold, Fernal Alona votes green in favor of the adoption of the agenda. Vote is 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay. Mr. Tooley or someone from the Division of General Services or the Facilities Maintenance Department, are you on the call? Okay, I'm not hearing anyone. Ms. Benali, could you send an email to?
Hello.
We can hear you now.
I'm sorry, I'm having technical issues. This is Marcus Tooley.
Mr. Tooley, is there another audio source where you're at that's providing audio for the meeting? Because there's a pretty heavy background echo.
Okay, let me turn that off. My apologies.
Okay, sir, you're recognized
Okay.
to provide your presentation now. I don't hear any background echo. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Shannon. Adult, Vice Chair, adult committee members of the HESI committee. This is again Marcus Tooley. I'm the Facility Maintenance Department Manager 3. I was asked to provide some information in regards to an incident that are questions that were raised on what are, if our department's allowing our custodians to use their personal vehicle. I guess there's an issue with them using their personal vehicle to transport trash. And I responded in the last meeting that in certain cases, we have a total of 17 custodial staff in the Winter Rock Fort Defiance area. In that, we have 61 buildings that are cleaned every evening, Monday through Friday, by these 17 staff. And so we have 2 supervisors that pick up trash. Basically, they go from building to building to building to pick up trash, and then also to deliver supplies to the custodial staff that are working in those specific buildings. And I did provide a copy of the building listing that we have in the Winter Rock and Fort Defiance area for your information, as well as the staff that are assigned to each of those buildings. Our department is had to abolish some position just to meet the budget allocation that was awarded to our department. And majority of our general funds budget is dedicated toward personnel, salaries, and benefits. And so, you know, just to stay within the amounts that's allocated to our department, we have been trying to make things work between the staff salary and the supplies that are needed. And then we also have 22 vehicles or 21 vehicles. And those 21 vehicles are used daily by the maintenance staff to address work orders on a daily basis. What we're trying to do is, because of the COVID protocols, we assign individual vehicles to the maintenance staff. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but facility maintenance has been deeply affected by the pandemic, the COVID. We lost 2 valuable employees due to that. So because of that, we got away from sharing vehicles. And so what we were trying to do was that when the custodial staff were working, they put out trash outside, and sometimes dogs get to it. So to prevent the dogs from getting into it, some of the custodial staff will take the refuse and put them in their personal vehicles and then take them to the dump site. The dump site is just right there by fleet management. There's trash bins there. That's where they take them, and that's where they dispose of them. In Fort Defiance area, we have trash bins at the facility maintenance yard. So we're doing all we can and trying to stay on top of this. And sometimes we have shortage in staff, custodial staff. So there's the 2 supervisors then try to pick up the pace in terms of picking up the work that's vacated by maybe a staff that's on leave. So there's no disruption in the process. So then sometimes it takes longer to pick up trash. So that's kind of like what we're doing here at facility maintenance. And I know that question was raised, the liability in terms of staff using their personal vehicles. We'll try to do the best we can. Right now, we don't have the funding to pay for additional vehicles. What we had planned before was to get maybe a van to transport the custodial staff from building to building to building, but then the question and the concern on social distancing and that came into play. So the staff, they prefer to be on their own just to ensure their safety. And so we've been trying to work with them in that regard. So, unless if there's some specific questions, I did provide in the last meeting copies of our budget as well as the vehicles that we have and the number of buildings in the Winter Rock, Fort Defiance areas that we maintain. So that will conclude my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tooley. Committee members, can I get a motion to accept the report?
Motion, Wanika. Second, Delegate McLean.
I recognize a motion from Delegate Wanika and a second from Delegate Begay to accept the report. Committee members, the floor is open for questions or discussion. Questions or discussion going twice?
Satilla, Honorable Vice Chair Carl Slater. This is Delegate Daniel, so I'm finally on the call. What report was that one?
That was your report. That was the facilities maintenance report from Mr. Tooley on trash collection and disposal.
Okay. I'm
do you want to ask
sorry,
questions or do you want to take over?
Let me ask a couple of questions. There was the aspect of personnel using their personal vehicles, and there was the question of, do they have liability coverage or any kind of coverage should they be doing that?
Mr. Tooley, I'll recognize you to respond to Chairman So's question.
Thank you, Presiding Chair. Honorable Daniel, so the question and response in regards to staff utilizing their own personal vehicles on behalf of the Navajo Nation. We do require them to have coverage, liability, full coverage to protect them. And so majority of the staff, they do have insurance coverages. So with Eshnanta.
Chairman So, do you have follow-up questions?
Thank you, Vice Chair Slater and committee members and staff on the call. So, Mr. Tooley, you are admitting that Navajo Nation personnel use their own vehicles for tribal operations.
Mr. Tooley, you
Presiding Chair,
recognize.
if I may. Thank you, appreciate it. Mr. Honorable, so in response to your question, we I guess I'm admitting, but as in my report, I reported that we have limited staff and in a lot of buildings that are clean on a daily basis. And so when the staff do their cleaning and then collect all of the refuse from each of the buildings, they put them outside the front door, and we have 2 vehicles that come around and pick up the trash. And sometimes, we get into a predicament of when staff go on leave, and then we are short-staffed, and so the 2 individuals that are picking up trash then have to resort to helping cleaning the buildings. And so it takes longer for them to pick up the trash and so forth. And so rather than cleaning up the trash that dogs get into, the staff would then just take it with them and then dispose of them to prevent that. Honorable, so.
Chair So.
Thank you. Yes, and Mr. Tooley, I'm not trying to, I guess, put you on a coat hanger on the wall. It's just, that's good public information that, yes, the Navajo Nation employees do step up to the plate to make the government run. And I guess the other is, in this message, we do have all across the Navajo Nation folks doing that. And a lot of times they're underappreciated, but I do appreciate the fact that you do allow that rather than kind of write up somebody or discipline them, because the need to do the work of the Navajo Nation government doesn't stop. It doesn't take a holiday, and that's the part that I think we acknowledge, we ourselves as elected officials also serve in that manner, no matter what. Thank you, Mr. Tooley. And how then, committee members, how then do we extend that type of statement and appreciation to, let's say, the Doltecs, the social workers, the ones that provide, the shelters. Those that are less fortunate than some of the folks on the reservation and across the nation. It is, we all acknowledge that this pandemic increases violence, domestic, and no Navajo is immune from it. And we have to, as we deal with family and relatives, community, we wake up to it every morning. So I just want to express that and give it some thought on how we best can convey that message of a real appreciation for our Navajo Nation employees. Thank you. Presiding Chair, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So, committee members, do we have further questions or discussion on this topic or the points that Chair So identified? Hearing none, I guess I'll offer a couple comments and then we can go to the vote. Unless others are inspired to speak, then please just interject and request to be recognized. Thank you very much, Mr. Tooley, and to your staff. I think everybody understands that you can't have a government without the basic services that make a place hospitable for work, and you help create that home for our employees to serve their people. So I really appreciate what you do and what your staff does, and the fact that they go above and beyond the call and utilize personal resources is appreciated when there are those gaps in what needs to be done and what's available to make it happen. So that said, you said there is an issue with your budget, and that's something that affects all sorts of programs on the nation. So if you have unmet needs requests, I think that can be submitted to the committee. Presently, there's a request to have a moratorium on UUFB and CSN expenditures, I believe. So it may not be passed soon at the request of the president, but I think this committee is open and receptive to working with you to rectify those unmet needs. So, committee members, any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Mose, can you please do a roll call vote on accepting this report?
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. Green. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Daniel Iso.
I vote green.
Honorable Daniel Iso votes green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Honorable Pernell Halona, how do you vote? Green. Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Vice Chair, I vote 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mose. Chair So, would you like to take over? Or would you like me to continue?
Yes, continue, Cecilia. Let me catch my breath.
Okay, thank you, Shania. We'll move on to item 5B, Tetra Tech Inc. Navajo capacity building. One, wastewater environmental monitoring is a highly accurate way to provide ongoing monitoring for COVID-19 with the potential to sequence to identify new variants at the neighborhood level, especially in communities where there are social or structural barriers to access diagnostic testing. Two, ongoing school support and community engagement is necessary for successful implementation. Principals and teachers need to feel supported when presenting the project to families. District leadership needs to be brought on board as champion to promote the program. Three, wastewater monitoring in schools can serve as a leading indicator of potential outbreaks in specific neighborhoods, allowing for tailored outreach and targeted use of finite resources. Presenter Rob Manriquez, principal geologist, available for presentation, Tetra Tech, Al Scott, Kathy Vandenheuvel, Leah Richter, University of San Diego, Rebecca Fielding Miller, Tommy Gaines, Fitri Wijaya. Rob Manriquez, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
You're recognized. Yes, you're recognized to provide your report.
Thank you. Yahate, is there a way that we can share the screen so we can present?
Ms. Benali, if you're hosting, could you allow access for screen sharing?
Mr. Vice Chair, I believe if Rob could, on the bottom of the screen, yeah, there it goes. Okay, yeah, it's on your side that it appears from your laptop. Thank you.
Okay, let me find the correct screen then. I'll step it off and I'll come back to it just a second.
I believe it was on.
Okay, can you see the presentation now?
Yes, it's a blue, It says early detection of COVID-19 helps schools stay safe and open. Yeah. And it has your name on it, yes.
Yeah. Okay, let me go ahead and make this a little bit larger for you. So thank you, Delegate Charlene So, for inviting us to present the excellent work that Dr. Rebecca Fielding Miller and her team at the University of California, San Diego have developed regarding early response COVID-19 detection for schools. And then also thank you to the distinguished committee members for allowing us to present to you today. Let's see. All right, so a quick review of our agenda. We'll do some introductions and then we'll get a little history on Tetra Tech and Navajo, our relationships. Then Dr. Fielding Miller will present Safer at Schools, her program, and talk about the COVID-19 program that she's been developing. We'll talk a little about the implementation and logistics, and then also finally, and most importantly, the building of Navajo capacity for doing this type of capability. So as was mentioned earlier, my name is Rob Manriquez, and I'm a professional geologist, and we've been supporting Dr. Fielding Miller and her team over the past 18 months for her program, which she's going to be presenting today. And this is the rest of our team. Alberta. There, we can't hear you, Alberta.
Hi, my name is Al Scott, and I have worked with Rob on a number of other projects, and I'm glad to join you this morning. I am a Tuchitni born for Shikahanzoho, and Tuchitni are my maternal grandparents, and Ashihi is my paternal grandparents. Thank you.
And then our University of California, San Diego leadership.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rebecca Fielding Miller. I'm faculty at the University of California, San Diego in our Herbert Wertheim School of Public Health, and I'm the principal investigator of the Safer at School Early Alert Program, and I'm just really pleased and honored to be with you all today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tommy Gaines, and I'm also faculty at the University of California, San Diego in their Department of Medicine. My contribution to the project has been on the statistical end, providing data support as well as study design support. I'm also an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation, part Navajo and Hopi, Navajo through my maternal grandfather and Hopi through my maternal grandmother. Thank you for inviting us and listening to us today.
Hi, my name is Carissa Wijaya, and I work with Dr. Fielding Miller and Dr. Tommy Gaines as a project manager at the SASE project. And I've been helping with the more program implementation portion of the SASE program. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you, everyone. Before we get started, I wanted to kind of show some ways that Tetra Tech has been working with the Navajo over the last few years, having provided environmental consulting services since the 90s. Most importantly, we're working on the abandoned uranium mines work with US EPA and Navajo EPA with the remedial assessment and evaluation services. And this contract started in 2017. And I was one of the primary authors of this proposal. And as part of that, it was very important for us to focus on building Navajo capacity. And as part of that, I've been working with Navajo Technical University. We put in place a memo of understanding to work together in building capacity at the university specifically. And as part of that, I'm on the engineering advisory board. And then also we've been helping pursue grants for the university to help build an environmental engineering program. And I'm happy that we won an NSF grant about a year and a half ago. And that has allowed us to hire 2 professors at Navajo Technical University to help roll out and develop the environmental engineering program, which was just recently approved by the Higher Learning Commission. And we roll this out in spring of next year. So we're very excited about that. And also virtual course for OSHA HAZWOPER training, which is critical for students working and professionals working in the environmental field. And so that's our commitment to the nation, as well as other ongoing activities. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Fielding Miller to present to you the primary focus of this presentation. Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Rob. Yeah, so like I said, I'm really honored to have the opportunity to share with you some of our work today on the Safer at School Early Alert Project, which we call SASE. And this was sponsored by the University of California, San Diego, and also by San Diego County Health and Human Services Agency. It's just been a real honor to work with them. They have had a lot of really exciting leadership to do this work. So SASE is an environmental monitoring project. Like I said, it stands for the Safer at School Early Alert. And what it is we're incorporating environmental monitoring through wastewater monitoring with responsive testing and community engagement. So it's really a full system for identifying potential cases of COVID-19 in school settings as quickly as possible. You can go to the next slide. So there's really a core belief. SASE is really founded on the idea that all children and their families have the right to feel safe at school, regardless of their neighborhood, their background, or financial status. So health equity was really baked into this from the absolute beginning. And really the idea was we wanted to create a preferential option where we figured out a way to deploy pretty cool, quite cutting edge technology at the service of communities that need it the most. So UC San Diego has been using wastewater monitoring on our own campus for over a year now. Several other universities are doing this. Arizona State, notably, was also a leader. And we thought, how can we take this technology that we're using to keep our own campus community safe and put it at the service of our community, and in particular communities that really need it the most and are the most vulnerable. So you can go to the next slide. So Rob, do you think you can maybe squish those pop-ups out of the way somehow? They were supposed to pop up later, but it's fine. So SASE is has, you can just drag it literally anywhere out of the screen just so folks can see the slide. So SASE has a few different components, and this is kind of a flow of how it works. We use wastewater environmental monitoring, and if you're looking at the screen, those are the little red octagons up top. And when we learn that there's a potential case of COVID-19 on campus, we rapidly notify the school leadership. So we usually have about 36-hour turnaround from the time that a sample is collected until we notify the school. And what that does is it allows for rapid responsive testing to try and identify that case. And in the meantime, people also know that there might be a case on campus. So people know to try and put extra risk mitigation measures in place. So this is a great time to remind your fourth graders that they should probably make sure the mask is over their nose and their mouth. It's a great time that even if it's a little chilly, let's open the windows or let's go outside and do a science lesson in the garden today to implement those extra risk mitigation measures even in the absence of knowing the case. And at the same time, deploying diagnostic or potentially antigen testing on campus to try and identify who it is. And then we also work very closely with the communities, and here in San Diego, we work very, very closely with the county to make sure that people have the resources that they need to isolate or quarantine or care for themselves. Because we understand that there's a lot of reasons why people might not test. Here in San Diego, and these were the headlines that you saw initially, we have a pretty bad history of, for example, sharing data with agencies that people would rather their data not be shared with. There was not long ago at all, the state, for example, shared license plate data with ICE, which was obviously incredibly problematic. The county was also briefly sharing positive data, addresses of people who tested positive with the police. And so communities are rightly nervous about the implications of a positive diagnostic test. And so we try and work very carefully to tailor the information and the outreach to address those concerns, but also make sure people have the information they need in advance. You can go ahead and scroll down, Rob. So the other thing that you can do with this is it allows for community level Sentinel surveillance is a technical term. We say monitoring because we know we work with communities that are nervous about surveillance for good reason. It allows you a really early alert at the neighborhood level too, so that you can deploy services, pop-up testing, pop-up vaccination clinics. So you can go ahead and go down to the next slide, Rob. So we did a lot of rapid formative work to figure out how to put this at the service of our communities, and this is just people really reiterating that there's a lot of reasons why people don't participate in testing and contact tracing, which is why having sort of an aggregate, anonymous, passive way of monitoring for COVID is really important. So on the top here, we have a staff focus group participant who shared with us, you know, I know a lot of our families have mistrust of like authoritarian figures because, you know, maybe they're not here legally. As you know, San Diego is a border region. About 20% of San Diegans don't have documentation. Or, you know, maybe they have other things to hide that they just don't want to share with authority figures. Another person said, you know, there's a lot of reasons why, especially our families, would shy away from being talked by somebody that they don't necessarily know, or they're already on the fence about what that person's role is in their life. So at the very least, if there's a situation where somebody has gone through this, to have myself or the principal be involved, that would be helpful. And what this person is saying is that their school in particular is a really trusted source of information. And so we work with the schools to make sure that the schools have the ability to provide accurate, timely information, that the schools can encourage parents to participate in testing and contact tracing. And as trusted entities, they'll often have more luck than somebody who's perceived as coming from the government. You can go to the next slide, Rob. So this is what SASE looks like in person, if you have your screen up. it's really a lot of different factors. So we have here a photo of Rob himself and some of the folks from Tetra Tech installing a wastewater monitor on campus. They're really not big. A lot of schools will like cover it with a trash can and then do like phenomenal art. We have some of the cutest pieces of art covering some of these little robots. And then there is rapid diagnostic testing, which is the other picture here after we identify a potential case on campus. And then we've developed a lot of materials for schools to share with their school community that's really tailored to parent concerns about how do I take care, what do I do if my child tests positive? How do I take care of them? What do I need to know? Where do I get a good mask? And so we've developed these materials that are specific to the school community, but also scientifically accurate, obviously, and based on CDC and local recommendations. You can go to the next slide, Rod. So I know that some of you are thinking about the fact that wastewater monitoring requires monitoring feces, because we know that COVID can be detected in feces because your gut gets an infection and then it sheds, and when somebody uses the restroom, that's how we can pick it up in wastewater. And I do get this kind of awkward question a lot of the time about, well, that's great, but not every kid will, poop at school. And we know, we're aware. But so what we did is last year we worked with 15 schools where we had deployed daily wastewater monitoring. And we were also doing weekly diagnostic testing at these schools. So we were comparing how many cases we identified with weekly diagnostic testing to how many cases were suggested by wastewater monitoring. And we found that something like 70% of cases that we identified were also accompanied by a wastewater signal. So wastewater is identifying at least 70% of cases on campus. And in the latter half of the study, when we had more than 70% consent, so over 70% of kids on campus, well, their parents had consented to weekly diagnostic testing. So we think we had a pretty good handle on how many cases were on campus. In that latter half, it was 93%. So 93% of the time that we identified a case, there was also a wastewater signal, which is just awesome. And in the other direction, about half the time when we got a wastewater signal, there was also a case on campus. So it's really accurate, which is just so cool. When Tommy did this math, I was just blown away and so excited. So you can go to the next slide, Rob. So this is on the right. We're just showing how people consented over time to diagnostic testing. As you know, it can be hard to convince people to test. And so, like I said, this red line here is the median testing over time, and we had about 70% of people who had consented to testing. By the end, several schools, 100 people had consented to testing. And a lot of that is because it's very different to agree to a test when you're pretty sure there's actually a case on campus than when you're just being asked to test every week for no particular reason. And that's actually something we're looking at this year here in San Diego. Can wastewater monitoring encourage higher testing uptake than just weekly testing? And on the left here is an example of a dashboard that we send to principals every day, where we say, here's how many wastewater signals you've gotten, here's how many cases you've gotten, here's how many people in your school have consented to weekly testing compared to other schools. So we try and make it really user-friendly. You can go to the next slide, Rob. So, like I said, SASE is really a whole system. The wastewater component is really important, but if nobody knows about it, if nobody knows there was a positive signal, then nobody knows to go get a test, nobody knows to wash their hands, nobody knows to wear a mask. So making sure that the community is aware and engaged is really important. So we work very closely with the principals, and this is a lot of what Carissa does, to make sure that they are comfortable, they're on board, they feel like they can really champion this project. We do a lot of community town halls to answer people's questions, to help parents understand what it is we're doing and why. We give out really good stickers which is very important to the kids. So whenever the kids test, they get a sticker. Right now they're holographs. I'm told they're requesting glitter this year, which I guess I'll have to track down glitter stickers now. And we provide really regular updates about wastewater, and in some schools we're also doing surface sampling. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this, and we've learned a lot about how to do SASE, certainly wrong, and we've learned a lot about how to do it right too. Because there's so many sources of information between wastewater and testing and community engagement information, there's a lot of pieces to pull together. And so the data management can be a little complex. That quick dashboard I showed you is a lot of information sources. Like I said, it really requires staff and principal buy-in. If the principal is not interested, if the district is not interested, then it's going to be really hard because, you know, we're not the ones who are in the school every day. We're not the experts on that school community. Really, the staff and principal are. And if people aren't interested in testing, obviously we can tell folks that there might be a case on campus and it's important to test either with us or anywhere folks are comfortable. It's important to mask. But if there's really low testing uptake and the case is never identified, that can feel really frustrating if a signal just keeps going off and it's never clear who the person is. So again, that community buy-in to ensure high testing uptake is really important. You can go to the next slide, Rob. So I just want to show you one thing that's pretty cool that we can also do with SASE, and that's community level monitoring. So on your left here, there's a bunch of blue and green and yellow, and these are school enrollment boundary areas. And what I mostly want you to see are areas that are darker, that are more blue, are areas that have really high incidence rates. So areas here in San Diego County that have higher case rates of COVID, and also schools that have higher rates of kids who are eligible for free and reduced price meals. So just know that the darker the area, the more likely it is that it's an area that is poor and has high rates of COVID. So obviously that's where we want to be working. And so here on the right, this is actually the number of signals that we've gotten per 7 days that the monitor has been on. And so you can see it's kind of shaded, and there's areas that are darker red, areas that are lighter red. So there's kind of on the top left there's a very dark red area, which is a school that just kind of kept having signals, constant signals, and we couldn't figure it out. And actually just on Monday, we did a walkthrough of that school to figure out what was going on. And we realized that one, that's one of the few schools that windows don't open. And two, on Monday, we noticed that this is one of the few schools that's served by buses. And the kids aren't, as far as we can tell, being reminded to put their masks on the bus. And so we could provide that really tailored, close look at a school that had unusually high rates of COVID and say, what is going on here that's different? And then try and rapidly offer advice about what to do. You also might be able to see kind of on the bottom right, there's 2 dots. I don't think it shows up here, but we have one school that's very dark red, which means they've been getting a lot of alerts, and another school that hasn't had any alerts at all, and they're only 2 miles apart. And we thought that's really interesting. But those 2 schools, even though they're 2 miles apart, they're actually very different communities. They're serving very different communities. And so we can say, okay, this school requires a lot of, I think in that neighborhood, requires a lot of Somali speakers. So let's make sure we go, let's make sure we have materials in Somali, let's do really specific outreach. We know the Somali community has some concerns around vaccine uptake here in San Diego. So let's do a really pinpointed, tailored outreach to that school community because something specific is happening here. So it's a really nice way to have very fine-grained neighborhood level look at what's going on, which I think is pretty cool and which we're already acting on. So you can go to the next slide, Rob. So moving forward, we're working to try and make this even more accessible, more friendly. We're kind of refining our dashboard, our online dashboard, so we can make it more family-facing, so that we can kind of have an integrated place where people can go and say, oh, wow, there seems to be a lot of COVID around recently. Let me just click on this link for here's where testing is. Here's a place that is nearby and accessible and acceptable to my community. So we're working to do some community mapping to understand local resources. oh, it looks like COVID is not so bad lately, I'm gonna go to that movie before it goes up again. And so we have all of these resources online. You're welcome to check them out. They're at sassysystem.org. But we're really excited about how we can make this as friendly as possible, but also as really cutting edge and cool as possible. Down here on the bottom right is 2 fifth graders presenting on Sassy at their local TEDx kids thing last year, which was just adorable. You can go to the next slide, Rob. So that's kind of my quick-ish overview of Sassy. It's been really exciting to work with our partner schools to implement it here in San Diego, and I'm really excited at the opportunity to share it with all of you and to think about if this is something that would be interesting here in your communities, and if so, what that could potentially look like. So I'll turn it over to Rob because Tetra Tech has been doing a lot of the sort of daily work with the actual installation and the couriering and the management, and so he has all that fine-grained stuff on logistics and implementation of the wastewater monitoring component.
Thank you, Dr. Philly Miller. So as you can imagine, supporting UCSD on this was a great privilege for Tetra Tech, and we've been excited to be one of the support team members throughout the last 18 months. And as was mentioned, a lot of that has been the actual logistics and implementation. That's kind of bringing Dr. Philly Miller and her vision of the program to the front door. So I'll just go through some quick slides on some of the things that we've been doing, and then we can roll on from there. So the field program elements, obviously there's quite a bit of design and upfront work. A majority of the work that Dr. Philly Miller was mentioning is done outside of the Tetra Tech view at this point, which is the upfront working with the schools and things like that. And then the field program elements, we have the sampling design and planning, a lot of the traditional implementation work, and then the auto sampler deployments, and then working with the teachers for some of the activities that are happening with them communicating to us the number of students in the classroom, and also making sure that we're able to provide personal protective equipment to the teachers and do our work safely around the children. The other program elements can include the initial diagnostic testing, which is essentially setting the baseline, monitoring and sampling the data entry. We use barcodes, and it's pretty much a seamless process for collecting the information. We're providing also additional web mapping applications to help us make sure that we can communicate the information to the laboratories and also to UCSD in a timely fashion. As you can imagine, this is extremely time-sensitive program, and a lot of the work we have to do is within that 7 to 10 day actionable time frame that Dr. Philly Miller was talking about before, where we can get a result before symptoms are actually being displayed. This is kind of a quick shot. Here's what an auto sampler looks like. That's the little a gray barrel on the right-hand side. And in some of the schools, since this is on a playground, we actually created a protective screen that sits over the top. A lot of the schools also have trash cans because the location is kind of out of the children's purview. And we typically will connect to either a clean out, a wastewater clean out, or a manhole. In this case, we're sitting on top of a manhole, and the tubing and everything is connected to there. And we are able to program the auto sampler to collect samples while the children are at school. On the left-hand side here, we have screenshots of our mobile data collection process, a system that we've designed that can be used on cell phones. So everything is collected using barcode, and then there's data entry that the field staff do to document the important information that UCSD needs for the samples and also for the laboratories. So when the samples are transferred to the laboratory for testing. And this is an example of our field web mapping application. What this essentially shows you are the different schools. In this case, this was during the pilot study, which was done last year, and we're currently engaged now to do SASE 2.0, which is more schools, and it shows the actual school locations on the maps. And then you also have the particular information, which is a small white box here that shows you a lot of the detail about that particular school. And then we can also see how many samples have been collected and get other information. It's also from this website that UCSD and also the county laboratory download the sample information so they can bring that into their laboratory information and be able to do the analysis and enter all the information without having to do hand entry and minimize that. So at this point, we kind of like to leave it open to a couple of quick questions. If there are any, we will continue with the presentation, but we wanted to make sure that you kind of understand everything at this point.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay, sorry. Just real quick, there's just a couple of slides left. What we wanted to do is we wanted to show ways that we feel we can help build this process on the nation. And some of the opportunities that we have could be training Navajo to overtake, and implementing, integrating with the systems that you have, and then trying to bring support services to help you implement the program. And these are some of the opportunities at that point. So this is included in the presentation that was shared with everyone. So food for thought. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we're done.
Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. And I will apologize for saying the University of San Diego. That's what was on the agenda, and that's what I read, but I see it's UCSD. Okay, committee members, can I get a motion to accept the report?
Motion, Delegate So.
The chair recognizes a motion to accept the report from Chair So and a second from Delegate Halona. Committee members, the floor is open to questions and discussion.
Chair, this is Delegate So.
Delegate So, you're recognized. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments and questions. I've heard this presentation and I was quite impressed with it. As we are trying to restore some normalcy to our schools and to the students' lives, we're still facing the impacts. Students sometimes are sent home at a basis of 2 weeks, depending if they are exposed to COVID. And in my situation, especially a couple of days ago, my niece was sent home with a notification that a classmate of hers had caught COVID. And, that puts a lot of restrictions in family lives and their learning abilities, because not only does it hinder their communication process with the teachers, but also their social relationships with their friends. And that kind of stops some level of growth. And, considering what we need to do as Health Education Human Service Committee members, I think this is one great opportunity that we can explore and somewhat implemented with DODI and introduce this into our school districts. So then that way, some precautions are taken and pretty much accommodate the lives of students. And right now, with this presentation, what is the likelihood that we can get these into our school systems this year? And, as I've always stated, we follow the news, we do our research. COVID viruses, they don't generally go away quick. And you compare that with other world matters, and you see that in light. This is something that we're going to be dealing with for quite some time. And as these new variants are generating and transforming themselves, we don't know what to expect within a year or two. So, I completely support this initiative if it were to be implemented into our school systems. And not only that, and what a great opportunity to the students and to learn and to data collect. This is a great opportunity to also get that scientific experiment and to have the knowledge grow, and hopefully it will pretty much generate more interest into the science field. And, you know, as we are trying to spur more interest into the students' lives, provide so many opportunities and decisions, I think this is one that we can also explore to put into our universities. Within the college, Navajo Technical University. And now we have a branch here at ANS Utah. And, you know, again, if we can also kind of highlight those initiatives, I would definitely be in support of. And I just want to say that hindsight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. So committee members, are there other comments or questions?
Question?
If that's Delegate Helona, you're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I was just curious on this process that you guys have in each school. How many units will it take for each school that you have to put in there? What does it take? How many units do you have to set up? That's my question right there.
Sorry.
Okay, we'll return back to the presenters.
Yeah.
Dr. Fielding Miller or Enriquez.
Yeah, that's a great question. So most schools have one monitor. Not all of them, though. It depends on sort of the plumbing layout. Actually, here at UCSD, so a university is obviously quite large and has a lot of residential buildings. So most residential buildings have their own monitor. Most of our elementary schools, because they're quite small, will have one monitor. If the plumbing is a little bit funky, sometimes they'll have two.
Yes, the idea is to catch 70%, I believe, Becca, of the population.
Yeah, that's the threshold we set.
How much does each one of these units cost?
Mm-hmm.
And do you charge them for it, or do you just like rent them out or lease them out?
So each monitor is about $3,000. We did a costing exercise as a piece of this. And to be honest, the real cost is not the installation of the monitor. We call it a robot for reasons I forget. The real cost is not the installation of the robot. It's really the ongoing maintenance and the couriering and the lab costs. I would have to look back at how much, we did some math on how much it is per school per year, but it depends on the lab. But the robot itself is about $3,000.
So on the robot you're talking about, and it has a warning signal on it, so that it warns somebody that the virus is present?
That would be amazing, and I hope that our lab partner is working on that, but sadly, no. So the way it works is we have the monitor is set up. It has a little tube that goes down into the sewage flow, and every day around 3 o'clock, the robot kind of sucks up what it finds in that sewage flow every 15 minutes, and there's like a little bottle inside of it, like a Nalgene bottle. And then every day somebody from Tetra Tech picks up that Nalgene bottle, swaps in a new one, and brings that bottle here to UCSD, where we have a lab that can run the sample. And I think and then we usually get those results about 24 hours later. So we can usually tell the schools at, say, Wednesday at 5 p.m., we can tell the schools what we found on Tuesday. And so it's about 36 hours from the time that the sample is, from the day until we can give this school notification of what we found.
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate that. That's a lot of good information and new technology. I hope we can get it to work better in the future and a lot quicker. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Delegate So had some questions that were not responded to. So I'm going to go back to the presenters.
Which questions were those?
Delegate So, would you like to reiterate? I think you had two, but I don't want to mess them up. And FYI, Delegate So, you're muted.
Chair Slater, the question that I did pose was generally to the Health, Education, and Human Service Committee as well as with Doty. You know, what are some of the initiatives that we can take now, and how soon? Because just now the cost estimate was pretty much shared with us, so we have pretty much that idea. But if we were to do a site to pretty much get a sample and see how a school would operate after this is put into a school district, operate and see how the numbers change and see how the academics of the students progress, or if it declines or inclines, that's what I would really like to see. So generally, I'm just reverting it back to us. Like, what can we do immediately to see this through? I know that some other nations are taking into this, and it also has seen some changes as far as with the students' achievement. And so, yes, that was my question, Chair.
Okay, I see that was towards the committee. Committee members, the floor remains open for discussion.
Chair,
Hearing
perhaps
none.
somebody,
Oh.
Doty. Sorry. Can I speak?
Thank you, Delegate. So I was going to say that we could look toward your leadership if you want to organize a meeting with Doty to discuss this and see if there's
Yes,
any
and I think
okay.
yes, and I think if we could work with Ms. Spinelli to schedule another presentation and see if we could do a site, somewhat like a pilot project there, and see just, you know, how the data and the statistics come along, and see if maybe we could just implement it with all of our schools in the nation. I say this because I take a lot of heart into these kind of initiatives. About 3 weeks ago, I did lose a student at Red Mesa, and she was only 12 years old. So, you know, those are kind of the things that we need to consider as leaders. And since we're in the capacity to make change and accommodate the students. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. So I think we could approach Doty. I don't see anyone from Doty on the line right now, but if you would like to initiate that, or if you would ask the chairs to do it, the chair, the vice chair, myself, we could figure that out and work on scheduling a site visit. Committee members?
Vice Chair Slater, Delegate Daniel So.
Chair So, you're recognized.
Yeah, Attila, Otto committee members and all the folks on the call. And we already have an acronym of SASE. But it's in one of the grant schools. I do appreciate the presentation. I know that I think it was ASU had already done a similar study regarding the same aspects of the test that is occurring. I would venture to say that again, it's just DOTI has to approach each of the school boards where they do have some reasonable authority, the contract and grant schools. And for the BIE schools, that's a totally different animal, as I think the committee recognized from yesterday. So again, how far up the ladder do we need to go to get the BIE schools to, I guess, cooperate? And then the dilemma is the facilities are overseen by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. In which the sewer lagoons would be the facility. Then the other is, again, getting Department of Education to the table, BIE and BIA to the table, as well the Department of Health, and then for myself, I'd like to see Dr. Laura Hammett on the conference call also, as I guess she is somewhat of a COVID expert, and she's her offices are close to the Northern Navajo Medical Center. And so if we do a site visit, then we should definitely invite her for participation. But I do appreciate the presentation, and thank you, Shabija, Honorable Charlene So, for bringing this unique study to the committee's attention. And we certainly, this is I guess, a non-standardized test. And I guess that's the part that gives it some relevance. I appreciate that. So if we need to do that with a motion, and since I motion to adopt the report, we could add it, items that we've outlined for a follow-up. Back to you, Presiding Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So, Mr. Bose, can you refresh my memory on who has the motions right now for adopting the report?
Yes, sir. Motion was by Honorable Daniel So and second by Honorable Pernell Halona.
So, Delegate Halona, do you consent to amending the motion to adopt to include those items that Chair So mentioned?
Vice Chair, yes, I consent.
Okay. Committee members, further questions or discussion? Sorry, who is that?
No questions on this end, sir.
Oh, okay. So okay. Well, that said, committee members, there's no further discussion or questions. Mr. Mose, can you please proceed to a roll call vote on accepting the report?
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Delegate Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Valona.
Valona votes green.
Honorable Pernell Valona votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Daniel E. So.
I vote green.
Honorable Daniel E. So votes green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika.
Green.
Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Vice Chair, we had a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. We'll continue with our agenda. We're now on item 5C, Navajo and Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund. Organization briefing update, organizational goals, current involvement with Navajo communities. Presenter, Ethel Branch, Interim Executive Director. Cassandra Begay, Deputy Director. Teresa Hatathi Delmar, Logistics Director. Ms. Branch, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. I should have Honorable Vice Chairman for that introduction. She'e Ethel Branch and Sheh Beef Between Nashlan, Nakai Bashis Chin, Nijani Dashache, the Nakai Dashanala, Daisy Nasha, Kentana Kehashke. And I'm the Executive Director, no longer interim, Executive Director for Yeha Alnido, which does business as Navajo and Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund. And I believe we have my Deputy Director on the line, as well as our Legislative Liaison. They'd like to introduce themselves.
Yeah,
okay, we might not have them. Oh, go ahead.
Good morning, Shadeja. Ado yat ebene sheya Teresa Hataku Delmar eya hinashia. Ado bin betrodni inchlen eshin hebashichin trabai dashichedo tadishkijni dashanale. Ado eya agao kae eya be ishja that is nisigi ado benache eyan tag kesto nata another is nisigi ado nhinat nolinigi Health, Education, Human Services Committee not a con sato e bansada kesto les ashin da hot end and he koto e be sato di jato sato e be a cat e was Ot our ear bans de kiss ado here nana. Back to you, Shadeja.
Oh, yeah, Shade. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started with the presentation. As I mentioned, for the organization update, I'm now the permanent executive director to provide some stability to our organization and to continue doing the important work that we're doing at the high level that we do it. And we are currently still under our fiscal sponsorship with Nonprofit Legal Services of Utah, but we do have our 501c3 application that is being wrapped up right now. So hopefully very soon we will have our own 501c3 status. We have about 22 employees all over the country and the world. Actually, one of our staff members is a student in Paris. She's a Navajo tribal member from Chinle. And then more than half of our staff are frontline staff providing boots on the ground for our COVID relief work. And our three main areas of work are direct relief, resiliency building, and housing. In terms of direct relief, you all are familiar with our phase 1 work related to COVID-19. We served over 500,000 Navajo and Hopi individuals just kind of counting, everyone knew that we served each time we served them. And we, things went really well considering circumstances in phase 1 of our work. And then that, by the time we got the vaccine and you guys were able to roll that out, we had a very strong rollout starting in December through April. Many Navajo people stepped forward and were vaccinated. And so our numbers improved tremendously starting in the spring. And, we always were very concerned about the rise of new variants, what those could do to our numbers. So we continued to monitor the weekly data of new cases. In the week ending of June 25th, we actually reached a low of 20 new cases in that week. So that was very exciting. But we were very concerned because that's when Delta was starting to pick up steam across the country. So we were kind of surprised to see such low numbers, but also very thankful. And so we wound down our direct relief program in early July, thinking that, okay, well, we can't really continue to justify the high level of COVID relief that we've been providing. And so we turned to resiliency-based work, hoping that we were through with this pandemic, or at least the worst of it. And we opened our first community center at Sabine Sky Monument Valley, and that opened on August 1st, and that's been tremendously successful. I'll tell you a little bit about that here in a moment. But meanwhile, we were continuing to monitor COVID, and we saw some rapid doubling of weekly new cases in July and August, starting from that low of 20 cases. So it didn't seem too alarming, though it was concerning as we were starting to see Delta get a foothold in our community. And then the week ending of August 20th, we saw the numbers double from 182 new cases to 418 new cases. And so that was extremely alarming. We felt that it was necessary to launch a new COVID relief program to address the Delta wave, because we felt like that was kind of the beginning of what would be a really tough time with respect to Delta in our community. And indeed, that prediction has borne out, unfortunately. The week ending of Navajo Nation Heritage Day, we actually saw 469 new cases reported. The week ending last Friday, we saw 723 new cases in our community. And of course, now we don't have the same level of donations as last year. There was a lot of media attention when Navajo surged ahead of all the states in terms of the high COVID contraction rate. So it's harder to raise funds for COVID relief. So we needed to, in launching our new COVID relief program, which is actually our Delta relief program, we needed to be more sparing in our funds and stretch those dollars, because we were pulling from funds that were budgeted for other things like opening more community centers and building long-term resilience in our community. But we have launched a Delta relief program. It is very strong. The main component is we provide isolation assistance on demand. We have a hotline number as well as a website form that folks can fill out to request assistance. We've served 281 families so far, and we just last week, the requests have increased. We received 71 help requests last week. We also have a Clean Hands project during this, or as part of this program. It's actually the third phase of our Clean Hands project. This phase, we're bringing in 250 hand washing stations for households that don't have running water. Putting in pipelines is great to get running water to these households permanently, but people have immediate needs, and they need to have easy access to hand washing opportunities to prevent the spread now and to save lives now. And so that's what this program is focused on, and we're collaborating with CHRs to get these to the highest need households. And then we also, as the holidays arose, we felt like it was really necessary in order to prevent community spread, to encourage people to stay home, so to prevent folks who are experiencing significant hunger. And then we know that there are lots of people in our community right now experiencing hunger. In the best of times, pre-NGS closure, pre-pandemic, 3/4 of our people were experiencing food insecurity. And of course, things are worse now in terms of our economy overall. And so we expect that almost all of our families are experiencing food insecurity right now. So we wanted to do something about that. And so we provided 1,000 food boxes for Navajo Nation Heritage Day. And that served 17 communities, 13 on Navajo, 4 on Hopi. And these weren't just a turkey, you know, these were the entire meal, because we wanted people to just stay home, have everything that they needed to be able to stay home, not have to visit extended family or public events. And we're going to do something similar for solstice holiday as well, and Kishmish for some people. And then the other component of this is our PPE program. In September, we put 506 PPE kits with 8 Navajo senior centers. We wanted to make sure that, you know, with this focused approach, we wanted to make sure we're serving the highest need, highest risk individuals. So we were focusing on seniors, children who are unvaccinated, and households that either have a case of COVID or have been exposed to COVID. So our isolation assistance just goes to those 2 types of households. But in terms of, you know, the senior centers, we got those 506 kits out to 8 senior centers in September. In November, we were able to get 310 PPE kits to 4 senior centers. Those were in Blue Gap, Cottonwood, Hard Rock, Low Mountain. And then we also were able to get 150 kits to 1 chapter that specifically requested the assistance because COVID is surging in their community. And then in terms of the schools, in November, we were also able to get PPE to 7 Navajo Nation schools, including Central Consolidated School District. So that probably was a number of schools. Shiprock Associated School, Black Mesa Community School, Red Mesa Community School, St. Michael Indian School, Pine Springs Day School, and Cottonwood Day School. And we were able to get those schools 35,477 masks, 1,008 8-ounce hand sanitizers, 116 thermometers, and 150 count packages of disinfectant wipes. And then we've also, we received a request from a hospital and they needed help with isolation kits. So we provided 126 of those to that hospital. And some of our isolation kits, like the kits that we provide to families that are isolating, they're not just, you know, disinfectant wipes, hand sanitizer, and 3-ply masks. We include KN95, 2 oximeters, 2 contactless thermometers, because we're planning for a household that's split between people who are sick and people who are not sick. And we want to prevent any cross-contamination as much as possible. And of course, we are continuing to provide, as we did in the past, 2 weeks worth of food. And again, that food is tailored for someone who is sick and can't actually eat real food, as well as family members who are still healthy and can have fresh fruits and vegetables. And then, of course, we're helping with other things too, like if someone needs firewood, you know, we want the sick family to not have to stress and worry about going out and getting the things they need in order to endure their symptom cycle. So we bring those items to the family, you know, dog food, adult diapers, baby diapers, all that sort of stuff. And then we are getting ready to launch an elder heating program. We were not able to get a donation of coal from Intex, so we're kind of having to find ways to get firewood in as low cost and effective as a manner as possible. So that's still kind of underway. And then one really, really important part of our work is a major part of our work, just in the same way that the isolation program is our Protect Community Vaccination campaign. Of course, as you know, vaccines are essential in saving lives during this pandemic. And unfortunately, we haven't made enough progress in the last year. Only 58% of our people are vaccinated. And when you look at the data, you know, I was just curious, like how many cases had we had last year at this time, and how many do we have now? And if you compare the data for December 6, 2020, and December 6th of this year, our cases have more than doubled. We had 17,867 cases last year at this time, and now we have 40,123 cases. So that is not good. And then of course, sadly, very sadly, the number of our relatives that we have lost has increased actually by a factor of 2.4. We had lost 631 relatives as of November 23rd last year. As of November 22nd this year, we lost 1,527. And right now, more than half, since November 11th of this year, more than half of our chapters have been in uncontrolled spread. The numbers keep changing. The highest I've seen so far was 67. I think they're currently at 61. And we map these out, actually. We print this map in the Navajo Times and the Gallup Independent Navajo Bee Observer each week. We update it according to data. And you'll notice that the uncontrolled spread tracks transportation corridors on Navajo Nation, like Highway 160 between Tuba and Kienta, Highway 491 from Gallup to Shiprock, and then of course Central Agency is just really hit hard. Like I don't think there's a chapter in Central Agency that is not experiencing uncontrolled spread. And of course they have so many transportation corridors running through Central Agency. And then of course now we face this challenge of Omicron, and we really don't know what's going on with that. There's a lot of uncertainty. But the threat is very high. It's been identified as 2 times more transmissible than Delta. And then the Moderna CEO announced a week ago that its vaccine likely wouldn't be effective against Omicron, at least the 2 shots. And Pfizer also just predicted recently, or actually scientists studying the issue predicted that the Pfizer 2-dose cycle would not be effective against Omicron. And so that has made the need for boosters essential. And we've incorporated that into our vaccine campaign, and we are urging people to not just get their first shot or their second shot, but also their 3rd shot. And that's something I would love to see the Navajo Nation pressing very hard on. And when you think about the transmission level in our community, like why are these numbers continuing to be really high? Like why are we basically in no better of a position now than we were last year? But if you consider that only 58% of our population, that's just a little more than half, is fully vaccinated, then it starts to make sense. Like if you look at the Delta surge in Europe, countries that have an equivalent vaccination rate to Navajo Nation, such as Saxony and Czech Republic, they're experiencing about 500 new cases each week for every 100,000 residents. So we're actually doing a little bit better than that. With using our population of 175,108. Let's see. That was reported in our 2018 Comprehensive Economic Development Survey. We should be seeing 890 new cases a week. So thankfully, we're not that high. We saw 740 new cases in the week ending December 3rd. So we are getting close, but we're not quite there. And then in terms of our resiliency, just to go to that specific vaccination campaign work. So what we're doing, we're trying to incentivize vaccination. Like how do you get people to step forward who are not stepping forward? We have identified that it's probably folks ages 20 to 40 that are unvaccinated. Almost everyone we speak to, like 95% of the people we speak to who are above the age of 40 are fully vaccinated, and many of them are boosted. So we really need to hone in. We're struggling. How do we get to that 20 to 40-year-old demographic where we're finding that the reason people are not getting vaccinated is because of fundamental beliefs, either Christian fundamental beliefs or they only want to access traditional medicine. So we're trying to break in and educate people, encourage people. Anyway, it would be great to be able to have some help to continue doing this work. We just completed a grant cycle. We were blessed to have $100,000 to work on this from the Made to Save organization. But we need to continue that work. It's more important than ever right now to continue urging vaccinations in our community. We would love to be able to have mobile units and work with healthcare services to bring the vaccine to our kids. There's a huge opportunity. Our school-age children make up about 25% of our population based on the data in that 2018 CEDS report. So if we can get that 25% fully vaccinated, that could take us really far. That could really bring that 58% number way up. However, we actually are seeing really good vaccination levels in the 12 to 18-year-old children. That's identified on in DOH's website as being 66% vaccinated. But we can make big grounds with the 5 to 11-year-olds and the kids who are 12 and over who are not yet vaccinated. If we can take those units to the schools and just be vaccinating folks there, and that's what we'd love to raise money to do. Anyway, so that's our vaccine program. And then also, in terms of incentives, we're providing $50 to people who are not vaccinated and get, or are not boosted and get their booster. And then if people get their first or second shot, they have the opportunity to win a really cool T-shirt, as well as or a $25 gift certificate. So we have folks calling in to sign up for that. We've advertised that in the papers, social media, and the radio. And we've had over 500 people step forward and participate in this program. And so we're continuing that. Again, we'd like to keep moving that forward with additional funding if possible, because again, right now, no time is more important than now in terms of protecting our community from Omicron. And then, so that is all of our relief work right now. And then in terms of resiliency building, as I mentioned, we opened our first community center at Sabine Sky August 1st. And that program, resiliency building program, and our community centers are centered on developing a strong local and sustainable economy. And this goes to making our communities pandemic proof and climate change resilient, because we saw the supply chain system break down last March of 2020. And we saw that Navajo was kind of the last stop on that supply chain flow. And that was a really scary time when, access to food and essential items was at risk. And we never want to see that happen again. And we believe that the creation of that strong local and sustainable economy is key to preventing that sort of threat in the future. And we can expect to see future pandemics as well as large-scale climate change-related disasters that could impact supply chain flow. So it's absolutely essential to be working in that area. And so in terms of our community centers, we seek to give lift to the really strong natural entrepreneurial spirit and problem-solving ethics that exists in our Navajo and Hopi communities. I mean, you just see that. You drive down the highway, you see people, selling on the side of the road. You can't stop these folks from trying to make a living. To that end, we provide small business entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs with the tools that they need to level up or professionalize their operations, such as streaming Wi-Fi, business machines like a fax machine, Xerox machine, computers, printers. We have a conference room for professional meetings for those folks and conference call capacity. We also provide training, like we have some digital literacy training that we have underway in Monument Valley. We have some folks who don't know how to turn on a computer or how to use the internet. So we're teaching folks those fundamentals, teaching them how to type. We also have financial literacy programming that we will be delivering in the new year. We're going to be helping with business planning and business development skills. And then we also have a lot of cultural programming, because that's the other piece of COVID, right? Like we were losing so many of our language and culture keepers. And how do we prevent that tremendous loss of culture and language in our communities? So part of that is making sure that that's being transmitted to the younger generations. And so we have cultural programming as well that's taking place. And that's actually been extremely popular in our Sabine Sky Community Center. And as of November 1, again, we opened in August, so this would be August, September, October data. We've had 504 visitations, 255 unique visitors, 73 visitors are our repeat visitors. We've given 100 tours, and we've overall served 24% of the Monument Valley community. And we define that Monument Valley community as the 2020 census data for Monument Valley and Halchita. So that is our community center work. We are gearing up to launch 2 more community centers in the new year, and continue building robust aspects of our Sabine Sky Community Center, like a coffee shop, a market, as well as building out the programming much further. Another important part of strengthening entrepreneurism in our community is creating a pipeline So there's a youth leadership component, grooming our young people to recognize their potential and giving them the tools to tap into that and actualize it and to see a future for themselves in our community, a future of hope and prosperity in our community. So if they leave for college, which of course we'll encourage them to do, they're doing it to get skills from the outside to bring them home and strengthen our communities. And then the third area of work is housing, and we haven't had a chance to work on that yet, and I'm hoping to get that underway next year in the new year. But the two areas we really want to work on is home renovation, making sure our families have habitable homes, you know, a non-leaking roof over their head, a nice warm house, a place that's climate change resistant, that is resistant to extreme temperatures, because, you know, there's only one place to be Navajo, right? And we want to preserve that forever and make sure that our people are resistant to climate change. And part of that, a very important part of that, is making sure that they have a home that is resistant to climate change. And then another piece of the housing work that we want to focus on is land reform. So I'm trying to get in place the plan for perfection of traditional title, essentially. The development of a registry system and a community that's willing to recognize what our people know in their hearts is their land, and create that registry, create the opportunity for our people to convert their land into capital. You know, if they can sell part of their traditional land claim rights, even to their own family members. Well, number one, they could give it to their family members and the family could have housing. And then number two, if they sell it to someone who needs housing, like a young professional who gets a job with the nation but doesn't have housing, they could buy a portion of this land claim and build their home there and have the security of knowing that that could always be their home. And then the family selling that claim could use that money to put in place a solar system or drill a well or start their small business or buy a computer to do some of their small business planning on. So there's a lot of important work that can come out of land reform. So those are the areas that we focus on, and that's where we are in terms of the work that we're doing. And it's a little bit about our goals and our intentions for the future. And so thank you so much for the opportunity to present. As always, I always would love some help from Navajo Nation in doing this work. We have not received a single dime from Navajo Nation at this point. This has all been private donations, the good, beautiful hearted people of the world who love our people and want to make sure that their humanity is recognized and protected. And so they have been very generous to us, and we are very respectful of that trust that they've placed in us. And we work very hard to make sure that every day we're working extremely hard and we're stretching these dollars as far as they can go. And we're investing those dollars in things that will have the highest impact for our people. So I had honorable chair, vice chair, and members of the committee. I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Branch. Committee members, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the report.
Delegate Begay, motion. Second, Winika.
Chair recognizes a motion from Delegate Begay and a second from Delegate Winika. Committee members, the floor is open for questions or discussion.
Chair, just a statement. Vice Chair?
You recognize Delegate Helena.
Yes, just a statement, just a quick statement. I just want to thank Sentinel Branch for continuing with her program and helping the Navajo Nation with all the people and keeping everybody safe and all the donations that she's had to giving out. I appreciate all those donations that you've been able to receive and helping the Navajo people. Thank you very much, Mrs. Branch. I appreciate all your help and wish you miles of success to continue with your operation. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Helena. Committee members?
Presiding Chair, Delegate Daniel So.
Chair So, you're recognized.
Yeah, Cecilia, Otto, guest committee members, and all the folks on the call. Ms. Branch, the data that you're citing, what are the sources of that data?
Honorable Vice Chair, should I wait till all the questions and then address the chair's question? Or should I just answer as the questions arise?
Chair, are you going to have a few questions? If that's the case, then I'll let you speak freely with the presenter. But Ms. Branch, yes, you're recognized.
Oh, okay. Here's that, Honorable Chair, for that question. The data that I'm citing, I guess my question is, which data are you referring to initially? But all of the data regarding cases and deaths is from Navajo DOH's dashboard, as well as the data on vaccination rates for Navajo children 12 to 18, as well as the general Navajo Nation population. If you're asking about the data relating to the Delta surge in Europe, I'm referring to an article, a German article that was published maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I can provide the link to the committee for that.
Thank you, Ms. Branch. I was just wondering if you were using the data from the daily press release from the Office of the President and the Vice President.
So to be clear, Honorable Chair, we are using the data that is on the DOH website, although at times I have used the data from the daily reports. So it's kind of a mix of that data. So it should all be the same data. I believe that the daily reports rely upon the data that's reflected on the NDOH dashboard. However, I do know that that data is updated. Sometimes there's a delay in reporting. So if you were to go back and look at the numbers I used, I mean, that data may not be exactly the same because of the updates that have occurred, but I am using Navajo Nation data.
Chair So, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Ms. Branch. Chair Cecilia, for giving me the floor. I was asking those questions with a big smile, so I was interested in the response. But in the aspects of the continuing work, do you actually have a proposal with a budget on each of the aspects that you've highlighted as what you want to go forward with? The other is, as a nonprofit, have you reached to the divisions and the departments and programs? Because it just seems like there's funding available within the programs and the departments and divisions of the Navajo Nation government. And the type of work that your group does, it certainly and so the reach of the Navajo government, arm's reach to the communities. I feel like it's very limited, but the work that your volunteers and folks do, it reaches to the Hogan level. And for me, that's the big difference in what you're doing in relation to what the government does. As Honorable Amber Knezba Crotty says, the mother government. And so then how do we best utilize the forces of a nonprofit entities, not meaning, forces like in respect to military terminology, but the forces of the aspects of what Navajo society is based on, the care for fellow citizens, fellow Navajos. And so that's the part that I think is the big difference between what a nonprofit can do versus what a government does. And so I guess that's the intent and purposes of the line of questioning that I'm posing.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Chair, for those questions. I presented a $50 million budget to the Honorable Vice Chairman in July, hoping that could be part of the ARPA funding, because we felt like it was really important. And I still believe that the first thing that the ARPA dollars should be used for is providing assistance to our people, giving them the tools they need to protect themselves in terms of PPE as well as food, because there is so much hunger in our community right now, and we need to make sure that lives are protected. And nutrition is an important part of people's capability of resisting transmission of the virus or contraction of the virus. So, I have that budget, and it lays out all the different areas that I've talked about, like elder heating program, public health education, vaccination program. That would have allowed us to do full-scale food relief in addition to PPE, but it does include PPE, and it would provide our teams with more vehicles. It would allow us to staff up more teams. Right now we have 7 teams, but we anticipate we're going to need to have about 10 teams to make it through this winter. Yeah, I'm happy to revise that budget. And in terms of the other work that we do, the community center work, I have not presented a budget to that, though I do have a budget that I presented to private donors who are ready to fund some of that work. But I have done outreach to J.T. Willie in the Division of Economic Development because I do know that we're supposed to have a Navajo Nation entity that would be sort of I would call it a sponsor, but really their regulatory oversight for any outside entity receiving ARPA funds. But I have never received a response from Mr. J.T. Willie. Granted, I have not sent him an email specifically on this issue, but I have tried to communicate with him, for example, with respect to our existing community center activities, but again, have never received a response. If there is a person who is more appropriate to speak with at DED, I would be happy to connect with that person. So that's kind of the status there. I have, through the generosity of the Vice Chairman and the graciousness of the Vice Chairman, been able to organize a call with Dr. Jill Jim. And so we've communicated, including about coordination of resources. There was no indication that we would be receiving any funds from that conversation, though I did ask if we could be considered to utilize some of the $6.6 million in private donations the Navajo Nation received and is just sitting idle and is currently unused. Those are private donations that could have come to our organization and that we could be using right now. But the Navajo Nation, did their own private donation drive that diverted a number of resources. And we're happy to help utilize those resources and get relief to the people today, rather than having it just sit there unused, because there is such a high need in our community. And so hopefully that answers your question, Honorable Chair.
Chair,
Thank
do
you,
you have
Ms.
a
Brent.
follow-up at this time? Okay, you recognize.
Yes.
Thank you.
There is the avenue for the nonprofits based on the resolutions that were adopted. Nonprofits could apply directly to the and submit their proposals to the Navajo Nation Department of Justice. If we do have Mr. Chad Abeda or Ms. Bobroff on the line, could you cite that particular BNF resolution? And that would basically open the door for that particular aspect, and would possibly receive good, let's say, a fair evaluation of the proposal and the intents of the use of the funding. Mr. Abeda or Ms. Bobroff. I know they were going to be excused for their Christmas meal. And I sure hate to impose with this minute bit of question.
Honorable Chair, I'm familiar with that resolution, but my understanding is I have to have someone in Navajo Nation government, essentially as a sponsor, willing to be our regulatory oversight. I don't understand that I have the authority to just appoint them to serve in that role. My understanding is that I would need consent, and that would sort of be in our application. And as I mentioned, I've not, I don't get responses from DED, so I don't know how to get to that point where I have a willing regulator.
Chairman, so this is Ms. Bobroff.
Thank you, Ms. Bobroff. If we may, Vice Chair Slater, allow Ms. Bobroff to answer the question.
Yes, Chair. I mean, I can offer some background too, but I guess the presenter has identified that the organization, she is aware of the legislation and I think has accurately conveyed what is required. But Ms. Bobroff, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good morning. It is BNF Resolution BFS-3121. And Ms. Branch is correct that you do need a lack of a better word, a sponsor within the government to get that through. If she's reached out to DED and the Department of Health and they have not included that in their proposals, my recommendation would be one to have a delegate speak with the speaker, and I believe we can get that request through that way, or probably the smoothest is for her to reach out to the FRF office, Tom Platero. They are working on, they are charged with expediting, being a liaison for such proposals and such. The one thing that I would note here is that the nation and the FRF office and such has been focusing on the infrastructure pieces. The next legislation of expenditure plans will be the health, social services, education type expenditure plans. So they are still being vetted. So I think there's still time for her organization to get their proposal in. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Chair, if I may, could I ask a clarifying question to Ms. Bobroff?
Yes.
So first, thank you very much, Ms. Bobroff, for that very informative piece of information in terms, or multiple avenues that you've recommended for us. I really appreciate that. And I guess my question is, my understanding regarding the FRF legislation is that we would be an external entity, so we would not be eligible for funding until sort of the third phase of ARPA legislation, and the health and education legislation. I understood that to relate only to Navajo Nation and programs that were pursuing those expenditure plans. And so I would have to wait until the external entity legislation for our proposal. Is that not correct?
Chair, if I may.
Yes, Ms. Barbara.
Thank you. So Ms. Branch has gotten information that is inconsistent with my understanding. The expenditure plans are not so much broken, or the legislation expenditure plans are not broken up by entity receiving the funds. They're broken up by categories. So the next legislation will cover expenditure plans for, as I said, health, social services on that side, and is not limited to just government entities. So my recommendation is for their organization to approach some of the avenues I suggested and get that in front of DOJ. Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee members, are there further questions or discussion items?
A follow-up, Cecilia, Honorable Vice Chair Slater.
You recognize Chair Shania?
Thank you. Ms. Bobroff, one follow-up question. In respect to, you made reference, can the legislative branch serve as a regulator?
Chair, so that question was for Ms. Bobroff, is that right?
Yes.
My apologies. I had to step out for half a second. Can you repeat the question? My apologies.
In reference to getting the ask to Speaker Damon, respective of the presentation, can the legislative branch serve as regulatory entity for this particular funding request, and to assure that expenditures are within the ARPA authority.
Thank you, Chairman. So I would say that no, the legislative branch cannot be what we refer to in the legislation as administrative oversight. That needs to be within the from the executive branch, because the legislative branch will have legislative oversight. I do not believe, and the executive branch will dislike me for this statement, but I do not believe that the executive branch has to agree that they will be administrative oversight. That what you're doing is you're matching up the services being provided with the division that has responsibility for that subject matter. So while I have not seen, of course, Ms. Brancher's proposal, that administrative oversight would be either, I would think it would be the Division of Health, although she has been talking with Economic Development. So that leads me to believe that I don't understand the proposal completely, but my recommendation is match up on the form, match up whichever division has subject matter responsibilities over the area of your presentation, include them. Thank you. And keeping in mind that these expenditure plans all get approved by the council, so the council can make a determination when they do the approval of who the administrative oversight is. Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair.
Honorable Chair and Vice Chair, is it possible to ask one clarifying question?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, so when we initiated outreach, we were thinking our proposal would be focused mostly on the community centers, because that was back in June and July. But of course, now that there is very much a COVID response need, that's evolved a little bit, and we have had, minor success in having a conversation with Dr. Jim. But perhaps, so maybe we need to split our proposal so that the community center component goes to either, I would think, DED or maybe DCD, and then the COVID relief, perhaps that would be best placed with DEM under DPS. I'm curious for her thoughts on that.
Ms. Branch, I'm just going to say this is getting into some pretty hard specifics that we would need in writing. And so I think it'd just be better if we organize a separate call with the Office of Legislative Counsel to talk these specifics. Based off what you just asked, I think we could go any number of ways. And the committee has several agenda items that we need to continue on with. But
I apologize.
My advice is that we have a subsequent call with the Office of Legislative Counsel. There are a few different options for external entities seeking funding from the nation. They can focus on what might be a thematic oversight or relationship with, say, the Department of Health or Division of Community Development, et cetera, or they could go directly through the Fiscal Relief Fund office. And I think those are options that your organization can explore going forward. So with that said, committee members, do we have further questions or discussion items for this report? Okay, I just want to offer a couple comments before we go to the vote, and that is
Honorable Vice Chairman, I can't hear you. Hello?
Vice Chair Slater, we can't hear any statements that you are making currently.
okay. Mr. Mose or Ms. Benali, can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My internet just gave out, so I came back into my phone. I don't know where I cut off, but I just want to say that I think we need to re-engage with the Department of Health on what their needs are with respect to COVID response right now, using the donation funding. When that legislation was set up to accept the funding, it said that the Department of Emergency Management would be the oversight for those funds. So the appropriations would flow through that department. And when we appropriated funding last year for COVID response from the donation fund, that went through DEM, but they're really not the primary entity that is driving the response to the pandemic on the nation. And I think Dr. Jim definitely needs a lot more support, and the Health Command Operations Center needs more support. But I think with the deployment of some of the resources, whether it's the isolation kits or food support, incentives for people getting vaccinated, we should have a strong look at funding some private or nonprofit partners. And it doesn't have to exclusively be the COVID relief group here, but it could be a variety of sources. So just some food for thought, and we should continue to have this conversation as the month moves forward. Any further questions or discussion, committee members? Hearing none, Mr. Mose, can you please provide a roll call vote for accepting this report?
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. Green. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable green. Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Daniel So.
I vote green.
Honorable Daniel So votes green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Vice Chair, a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mose. We'll move on to old business, item 6. There's none. New business, item 7. A, legislation number 0250-21, an action relating to the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee and the Budget and Finance Committee, accepting the Auditor General's audit report of the Fleet Management Department and the corrective action plan proposed by the Fleet Management Department. Sponsor, Delegate Pernell Halona. Committee members, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the legislation.
Motion, Wanika.
Is there a second, committee?
Second, Delegate Begay.
We have a motion from Delegate Wanika and a second from Delegate Begay to adopt 250-21. Committee members, I'm going to ask for questions or discussion on the legislation? Questions or discussion going twice? Committee members, do you want to hear a presentation on the legislation? If so, please register that now. Otherwise, we will move to a roll call vote on the legislation. Going 3 times. Mr. Bose, can you please move to a roll call vote on legislation 25021?
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Delegate Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Vote green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Green. Honorable Daniel So.
I vote green.
Honorable Daniel So votes green. Honorable Edson J. Wanika.
Green.
Honorable Edson J. Wanika votes green. Vice Chair, a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mose. We'll move on to item 7B, legislation number 0256-21, an action relating to the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee and the Budget and Finance Committee, accepting and approving the Auditor General's audit report of the Navajo Head Start and the corrective action plan proposed by Navajo Head Start. Committee members, is there a motion to adopt the legislation?
Motion, Halona.
The chair recognizes a motion from Delegate Halona. Is there a second?
Second, Wanika.
Chair recognizes a motion from Delegate Halona and a second from Delegate Wanika. Committee members, questions or discussion on legislation 25621?
Presiding Chair, Delegate Daniel So.
Yes, Chair So.
I'm the sponsor, and I really feel like the committee needs to hear from Acting Superintendent Ms. Patricia Ghani, and she will introduce the individual who will respond to questions from the committee. If we could allow that, Presiding Chair, appreciate it.
Yes, Chair So.
Chair, this is Delegate, so I'm in favor of the presentation, Beeb.
Chair So, you are recognized with your respective agents to present on legislation 25621. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Slater and members of the HES committee and all the folks on the call. Again, this is an audit, performance audit that was requested 4 years ago, and it just has taken this long to get it back to this committee in the form of a report, and I feel like it's very important. There are many factors that need to be addressed in the administration and operation of the Navajo Head Start program, and for that reason, I'd like to have Ms. Patricia Ghani address the committee, and then she can introduce the responding individual to some of the questions that we may have. Committee members, thank you. Ms. Ghani.
Ms. Ghani, you're recognized.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Yat E. Shitsui, Honorable Vice Chair Slater, Ado Shajaek, Chairman So, Yat E. Members of Health, Education, Human Services Committee, thank you for having me this afternoon. Shea Ya Kwadoshit Edjit Do Pat Ghani E Ya Yanishya, Acting Superintendent E Ya Shanan Nishkwaiga, Department of Burnett Education. Ado Sato Shanan Nish E Ya Di Navajo Head Start E Dest E Ya Sato Besnashnish. Kwado E Ya Baj Ahod. Chairman So, you mentioned that there is a completed performance audit of Navajo Head Start. Moss Adams was secured by Auditor General's Office, Ms. Helen Brown, and her office worked alongside Head Start to furnish all documents for the review by Moss Adams consultant to conduct the performance audit. So if I may remind everyone, there were 20 areas that were found to be of concern as part of this review. And we did task, at the time, Dr. Elvira Bitsui as the Assistant Superintendent for Navajo Head Start. She did lead the team members within Head Start to establish and develop a response to the 20 findings within the performance audit. And I just want to make special note here that Dr. Elvira Bitsui is not with Head Start in the capacity of Assistant Superintendent any longer. She left the program at the end of October of this year, 2021. And I did vest responsibilities with Roy Tracy. Mr. Tracy has been with Department of Burnett Education for a number of years. He does serve as a program manager for Office of Education Research and Statistics. And he has been delegated as the authority for Navajo Head Start. Di kwaige na aska do Navajo Head Start ajaben da anishigi bi idest in ebe has ani do hit abe da anishigi aja naha hasht edza. Edi kwaige na din go as an echas anigi aja edis ahan so she ya nal so se hadalia. Yadi Auditor General Brown, Abeyen Hisnahasne, Dequi, the Mo is Linda, Adoti, Quagabahol Gigi, Yadi Auditor General, the Corrective Action Plan, Yisninigi, Hait Abesh, et on Nishigi, Do Bedget on Nishigi, Bohanad Zangit, Ajigi e Hadalia, Do Ajibe Yikin Na. She's accepted and approved the corrective action plan that has been submitted by the Head Start leadership team. Ado e dijin kwagid Roy Tracy e ya bahuidesh as e han sago e ya nikilchodo as the overarching areas that have been addressed since Auditor General's acceptance of the corrective action plan. We felt it important to apprise Health, Education, Human Services Committee of the direction of Head Start under the auspices of this corrective action plan that is being implemented. So with that, Chairman So and Vice Chair Slater, members of Health, Education, Human Services Committee, and greetings to all others who are on the call. Roy Tracy, Mr. Tracy?
Oh, Superintendent Ghani. Chairman So, if I may introduce myself. Members of the Health, Education, Human Services Committee, and Honorable Delegate Chairman So, thank you for allowing me to present this morning or this afternoon on this day, December 7th. Total Sledo, Tobang Bus 16, when the issue changes. So, for Tracy, I worked with the Department of Education and currently serving as the delegated superintendent over the Navajo Head Start program. If I may, Chairman So, legislation number 0256-21, the Navajo Head Start Corrective Action Plan was signed that legislation number and again was deemed ready for committee action on November 30th. We are here today to seek approval and through Health, Education, Human Services Committee, and the 20 items that were listed on the corrective action plan have been thoroughly worked on and implemented into the new 5-year Head Start grant application, which was submitted on December 1st, 2021. That submission with the new grant application and the self-assessment and annual report were uploaded into the Head Start portal. Now, the Head Start grant application has the corrective measures incorporated into the new 5-year cycle. Those corrective action plans have timelines within the first year and 2 years of the Head Start program for the new 5-year cycle. And so all 20 of those items have been put into that new planning process. Now, there are a few items that one of the key items that we had notified the Head Start Policy Council and the Navajo Nation Board of Education, who approved the corrective action plan. That was on September 1st of the Policy Council, and then the Board of Education on September 2nd. So almost everything that has been identified are programmatic and functional duties within the Head Start program. There were several citations that were addressing systemic issues. Those will require interdepartment or interdivision cooperation and assistance. And one of the key things is that with the corrective action plan, one of the key things is we have to be aware that corrective action plan will require amendments to the Navajo Head Start Plan of Operation and the organizational chart. Per the corrective action plan, there were listed several positions were deemed necessary to meet the corrective action plan, and that is one of the additional side points there that we are addressing at the moment, and we are currently dialoguing and developing or have developed those positions and are in the process of amending the plan of action and an organizational chart. That's about the only key issue at the moment that will affect Head Start at an upper level, organizational level. Otherwise, majority of the 20 items, again, are systemic, functional, and operational changes within the Head Start plans. In a summary overview, that is what I am presenting today. Thank you, Chairman So.
Chair So, does this conclude your presentation?
Pretty much, Vice Chair Slater. And thank you to Mr. Roy Tracy for stepping up to assume the role that that Mrs. Garney referred to. Yes, presiding chair, our presentation. And if the committee wishes to ask questions about the actual aspects that may require reference to personnel issues or legal and liability issues, we could ask Ms. Bobroff to help us in a presentation in executive session if the committee so desires. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair So. Committee members, the floor is open to questions and discussion. Delegate Charlene So, you had spoken prior to the presentation. Do you have comments or questions at this time?
Chair, I do not at this time.
Thank you. Committee members, questions or discussion on legislation 25621? Could I ask for a second time? And a third time? There are no amendments, but I believe we need a second reading. Is that correct, Ms. Benali? Committee members, can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. Can you hear us, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I think when we're not final authority, we just need to read the legislation title for a second time. Correct, Mr. Mose?
I don't think so. We didn't do it on the last one, sir. 250.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, I've called for questions and discussion 3 times now. We received a presentation from Chair Daniel So and from Ms. Ghani and from Mr. Tracy. So one last call for questions or discussion. Hearing none, Mr. Bose, can you please do a roll call vote on legislation 25621?
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Honorable Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Helona.
Votes red.
Honorable Pernell Helona votes red. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So.
I'm in favor.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Daniel E. So.
I vote green.
Daniel E. So votes green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika.
Green.
Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Vice Chair, vote of 4 in favor, 1 opposed.
Thank you very much, committee members. We're now at the end of our agenda. Item 8, close of meeting, announcements, adjournment, and next meetings. Next meeting is December 13th, 2021, meeting with Education Forward Arizona Foundation. Committee members, are there announcements?
Vice Chair, this is Juanica.
Chair Delegate Wanika, you're recognized.
Thank you. As far as, it's not really an announcement, but just a request from the chair and yourself. I'm still really concerned about the situation with Richfield. Is there anything we can do between now and students going on break? Because I'm really afraid when they come back, they might not have a place to go. Really concerned about the funding that's supposed to be utilized to operate the dorm and as far as the school for the Navajo students over there. Concerned about that. Maybe Chair So might have additional information. Thank you.
Chair So, do you have any additional information on this? I think there was some correspondence from Mr. Franklin on this matter, but I can't pull it in front of me right now. Chair So.
Vice Chair, Delegate Begay.
Delegate Begay, you're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Chair, colleagues on the Health Education Human Service Committee and all those listening in. I appreciate the Honorable Delegate Juanica's remark on Richfield Residential Hall. That is a big concern. I don't think, we have talked about this and we have brought it up several times at meetings. It seems like certain people have said that some type of action would be taken, but so far we have not heard anything as specific as far as something specific that will make you feel comfortable that Richfield students will be allowed to come back to Richfield to the dormitory after Christmas break. The option that we heard and the concern that we heard from the residential hall is that if no funds are received, there is a very good possibility that the students cannot be allowed to come back, and the buses that transport them from the reservation back to Richfield will not be allowed to come down to pick them up. So that is a very big concern. And we, with the tour and the meeting that we had up there, I'm not thinking of any other school no less than Richfield, but this is a great institution where the continuation of students' learning cannot be delayed, or cannot be hindered. We're going to put them in a situation where they have to catch up if they don't continue their schooling on schedule. So something needs to happen, and some department needs to take action where the administration at the Richfield Residential Hall would be able to feel comfortable in saying that, okay, we will send the buses and we will pick up our students and our students will not have any delay in their learning process at Sevier School District. That's what we want to hear from the, as far as HESI committee members. And we really like to get Richfield Residential Hall administration, the director there, Mr. Cody Workman, have him feel that there will be no break or delay in the school's students' education there. Vice Chair, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Delegate Begay. Shanella. I'm going to do another call for Chair So. Chair So, are you on the line?
Yes, I got kicked off and now I'm back. Strange that how it happens when the phone is just sitting on the desk. Basically, the letter to Tony Dearman has been signed and sent. And Mr. Derek Franklin followed up with an email directly to Mr. Dearman. I think Ms. Ghani could provide some additional details. I don't know if Mr. Franklin's on the call, but Ms. Ghani is, so that aspect. And again, and if need be, the committee could also address our relationship with BIE, all the way to DC, as well as what exists on the Navajo Nation. And I mean, it just seems like BIE is looking at us as COVID spreaders, even through teleconference calls, and they don't want to attend our meetings. So that's an item that's very distressing. I don't know if we have to invoke congressional leaders to fix that situation. But the committee is wanting some good, hard answers from the folks in BIE that can make decisions to improve the relationship, and most importantly, the aspect of signing off on the cooperative agreement, as well as sending the lawfully appropriated funds to the Sevier School District, as well as to the Richfield Dormitory, Richfield Residential Hall. Again, it goes to the fact that we as a committee, the students are our children, and we have to make sure that their education is not interrupted. Committee members, if we can allow Ms. Ghani to speak to the issue.
Ms. Ghani, are you still on the line?
Shitsui, Vice Chair Slater, yes, I'm here. Thank you for the recognition and to provide just a little bit of update. Although it is not significant or much, Yesterday, I was able to join for a little bit until I got into a drop zone. So I must share with committee members, I have been tending to family the past few days. So en route to tend to those matters, I got into a drop zone yesterday and fell off the call. I had been extended an invitation just moments before this meeting from BIE, in which Ms. Karen Malone, who is the new designated Deputy Director for Navajo region, she extended an invitation to have a conversation with severe high school personnel in regard to a cooperative agreement that has been requested from severe school district. And as leadership have addressed here, there's a need to have that document in place to assure funding will reach severe school district. And those are funds for, first of all, students with disabilities, in addition to ISEP funds for the students who attend severe school district under the auspices of the residential program in Richfield. Unfortunately, I was not able to follow the full context of the conversation, but what I gathered is that there are some questions that BIE is raising for Severe to answer. But in short, as of yesterday, the BIE has not yet made available a cooperative agreement to assure that funds will reach Severe School District. So it is on my list of things to do today to reach out to Ms. Lisa Crane from Severe School District to get an update as to the conversations and also to do an outreach to our BIE colleagues as well. So we continue to be involved, but what has been challenging is that we don't get the meeting invitations well in advance. So we've been receiving the invitations like moments before, which makes it very difficult to, wipe your schedule clean so that you are in full participation for these things. So unfortunately, yesterday I was interrupted by driving into a drop zone. So that is not much, but I just wanted to give a context of how we remain involved and our intentions to see this through. Thank you, Vice Chair Slater and Chairman So.
Thank you, Ms. Ghani.
Thank you, Mr. Ghani. Presiding Chair, the letter to Tony Dearman is basically to call for a meeting between the committee and Mr. Dearman. And as far as I know, his office hasn't responded to the letter. So at all levels, we're trying to effect this the request to get funding to Severe School District and to Richfield Residential Hall.
Vice Chair Wanika.
Delegate Wanika, you're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the committee. I don't know, Chair, so what you were saying, the congressional intervention, maybe we need to pursue that too. The reason why I'm saying it is because of the timeline. We just have around 20 days left, and it seems like we're not getting the responses that we need. Might be best to go that route too. I don't know who, as far as Utah representatives and senators are that are working very closely with Navajo Nation. So we have Arizona and New Mexico. maybe we need to have them put some pressure on BIE, whatever. Dito ya ashhondo on dapo dito. Na so obetitos ka. Ede ya sitis Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Monica.
Honorable Vice Chair Slater.
Yes, Chair So.
If I could get the consensus of the committee to reach out to congressional staffers and also to Special Advisor to Secretary of Interior Deb Haaland. We can also do that by authoring a short email and attaching the letter that was sent to Mr. Dearman.
Committee members, is there consensus? Is there any objection?
That would be good. This is Monica.
I agree, Delegate Begay.
So I agree with that. That.
Okay, not hearing any objections, then Chair So, I think you have your consensus to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it, committee members. And I guess again, going forward at some point in time, with the help of legislative council, we really need to amend Title 10 to really just not make it just kind of like a government to government status with BIE. There has to be the strengthening of the Navajo Education Sovereignty Act. That when the committee needs information from BIE, that it has to happen. And what's occurring is undue stress, number one, to the parents and to the students. And certainly that doesn't aid in having the students achieve the high educational success. The committee members, we'll think these through, and and I think Monday's presentation and interaction with that foundation, the data that will be shared will bring highlight to it. Some of the aspects that we really need to look at. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you, Chair. Committee members, is there further discussion on this matter? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn at this time.
Motion, Delegate Begay.
Second, Monica.
A motion from Delegate Begay and a second from Delegate Winika to adjourn. There's no debate on an adjourning motion. Mr. Mose, can you please do a roll call vote for adjournment?
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Elizabeth Gay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Junior votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Honorable votes green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Daniel Eso.
I vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Daniel Eso votes green. Honorable Edison J. Winika. Green. Honorable Edison J. Winika votes green. Vice Chair, vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed, adjourned at 1:11 p.m.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mose. Can you or Ms. Benali contact me about signing the committee reports? I can head into Window soon if they'll be available this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. We'll text you when they are available for your signature. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.